How's it going, folks? It's your boy ZZ Gulu. Today I'm going to be doing a video talking about Alchemy. I wanted to use this video to quickly talk about some of the new changes that's coming up. Well, number one is there's a lot of overpowered cards in Standard right now. And so what they're trying to do is trying to take those cards and maybe by quote unquote rebalancing. When they say rebalancing, they really mean nerfing, which means washing this card down, or buffing, which means they're going to make the card, if it's an average card or doesn't really get much love, but it's a mythic or rare, they're going to try to boost its stats a little bit more so it becomes viable to play in Standard. Now, if you open a pack that happens to have that card, you will also get the rebalanced version of that card as well. You can buy those packs, same as you would like a Crimson Vow pack or an Innistrad pack, and buy an Alchemy pack. So this is a pretty big move by Wizards. They're essentially now saying, look, we're going to take a step away from paper formats. They really want to make Standard and the meta more evolving and fast-paced. They don't want the metagame to stagnate. Now, we've had pretty much about, I would say, 3 to 4 months of mono white and mono green being the dominant decks in this metagame. And then with the introduction of Galvanic Iteration, which came out in Innistrad, we've had this weird Alrund's Epiphany combo deck, the Is It Turns deck. These 3 decks are dominating the metagame, and they have very high win rates, not just in best of 1, but also best of 3. Alchemy is a solution to that because they're now rebalancing a lot of those cards that were causing problems in the meta, or maybe creating a metagame or essentially a metaverse that's very dominated by certain decks. I'm going to quickly go through some of the cards that they've actually decided to nerf from the existing Standard sets and just give you my reaction as to what I think about this. The first card is Alrund's Epiphany. On the left, you can see what Alrund's Epiphany's original printing was. If you notice, there is a little sign here next to the name Alrund's Epiphany, the arena symbol, which means this is the digital only version of this card. Now, Alrund's Epiphany, its Foretell casting cost is the same as its regular casting cost. The only difference is when you Foretell, you can create the 2 bird tokens. Whereas otherwise, without the Foretell, you're essentially just paying 7 mana to take an extra turn. You're essentially taking away the win condition. The win condition being is take extra turns and build a board state of birds and win. You now have to find an alternative win condition, right? So let's say you can take those 2 extra turns, but you got to do something else with it in those extra turns. If you foretell the spell, you can then create those 2 birds. If you copy that spell with Galvanic Iteration, you won't create the extra set of birds. You're only going to create those 2 birds from the foretold casting. So you're really just going to get 2 birds and 2 turns now. But you're still going to pay 7 mana for this, so which means now your Galvanic Iteration combo takes 1 turn longer to do. What do I think of this? Honestly, I still think the Alrund's Epiphany card is really strong, but I do think people are going to move away from Alrund's Epiphany as being a win condition and focusing more on the Dragon Egg and the Goldspan Dragon. Or maybe the Hullbreaker Horror, dominating the board state, or finding another card that allows them to create creatures on that extra bonus turn that you have. Alrund's Epiphany is a very powerful card. It's been probably in most tier 1 decks, it's been the enabling card. The next card is Sennas Chariot. So I was pretty surprised to see this one get nerfed. Now, it's not really a nerf because all they did was they took away one of the cat tokens, but then now the crew cost is 2. So you have a 4/4 that crews for 2. It's a lot easier to crew it. Still a good card. I don't really see how this got nerfed. It might got maybe a little rebalanced, but it's still a powerful card. Faceless Haven, which is used by pretty much every aggro deck, it got nerfed from a 4/4 to a 3/3. That's still pretty good, but it does make those aggro decks just a tiny bit, worse off. Having that extra 1 point of damage, though, I don't think it's a make or break kind of decision. It just means that you have a little bit more time to fight against those aggro decks. This one's huge. Goldspan Dragon, when you target it, it doesn't create the extra treasure. This essentially means that you can interact with Goldspan Dragon a lot easier and kill it before it attacks, or bounce it. nerfing this actually makes Goldspan Dragon a lot more fair to play against. So I think they did a good job on this one. I don't think they should have allowed it to create a treasure if it became the target of a spell. It's still a powerful card because you still get to create 2 extra mana for all the treasures you have. We just have to do a better job at protecting it. Good job on this, Wizards. I think obviously a lot of Izzet and Gruul players are going to be upset, but I think this is definitely making Goldspan Dragon, which is a very busted card, way more fair. I was surprised to see this one get nerfed, Luminoric Aspirin, but I can see why they did it, because being able to put a counter on before combat or at the beginning of combat on your turn is very powerful, especially if you get to go first. This nerf of putting the counter at end step actually makes it a lot more fair, because you know, if you happen to go first, at least you're not getting in for way more damage than you're supposed to. It also gives the opponents, people playing against mono white, a chance to at least, like, you know, build up their defenses against something like this, right? Mono white already is overpowered, and did, you know, and even with this nerfing, it's still going to be overpowered. Omnath, so most of you probably, if you're new to Magic or new to Arena, probably don't know Omnath because it got banned. When they banned it, I was actually quite happy because, you know, I thought this card was so busted that once it comboed off, there was no coming back for you if you were up against this deck. When you cast this and it entered the battlefield, you drew a card. So it replaced itself automatically. And then you started playing Fabled Passages and, you know, ramping with the Beanstalk Giant and all these things, and all of a sudden you were, you know, getting 4 more mana and dealing damage, and it was just a nightmare. So they've now allowed you to play an Omnath, so it doesn't replace itself anymore. Instead of drawing a card, you just scry one. But I believe they still kept all the other landfall triggers. This card is still pretty busted. Now, mind you, it costs 1 more mana to cast it, right? So it costs 5 mana instead of 4. If they print another Fabled Passage, this card will go off. It will be crazy. Cosmo Elixir, so at the beginning of your end step, so you draw a card if your life total is greater than your starting total, otherwise you gain 2 life. Honestly, you can play this artifact in a lot of decks. It didn't really get that much play, and it's a 4 mana artifact, so it's very expensive. So they buffed it so that you can play this in pretty much any deck and feel good about it, because now not only do you gain 2 life, you also get to scry 1. Still a good card, but I don't know. For 4 mana, there's a lot of other 4 mana plays, and I don't know, but sometimes by turn 4 you're dead, so the extra 2 life doesn't really help. Demilit is one of those cards that came out in Dungeons and Dragons set. This card didn't get any love in Standard, at least not that I saw. First of all, this card to begin with is very difficult to build around, especially in Standard right now. Maybe this might be, now with the Alrund's Epiphany being nerfed, this might be your win condition in a Galvanic turns combo. So if you go Galvanic Iteration into Galvanic Iteration, right, because you can cast that again for flashback, and then do an Alrund's Epiphany, that's 3 spells right there. And then you cast it for 1 blue, right, from your graveyard, if you have it in your graveyard. If you don't, then you can just cast it from your hand for 1 blue. And this could be your win condition. This buff is just good enough because 4 is the inflection point in Standard right now, 4 toughness. And it can also block a lot of 3 powered creatures as well. I still don't really think this card is going to get that much play anyways, because there's so many powerful ways to win in Izzet than with Demilit. Maybe a mono blue, I don't know. Druid class, okay, I'll save you the time. They didn't really change much here, except they just made level 3 2 mana less. It doesn't really, unless you're a landfall deck, right, built around landfall, this deck isn't gonna really win you games. Or this card isn't gonna win you games. I haven't seen Druid class get any play in Standard. There's a lot better 2 mana enchantments. You know, Ranger class for one. So this buffing is pretty useless. Same thing with Wizard class, they did the same thing. Now, Wizard class is a cheaper enchantment. The 1 mana enchantment, it's gonna take up 2 or 3 cards in your deck at least. So, you know, what are you going to take out in your Izzet deck or your Azorius deck? Like, there's so many good cards right now. To put this in your deck over, let's say, a Divide by Zero counterspell is insane. So I don't think this is still that good, and most people are not a card draw deck anyways. I mean, you obviously be nice to draw cards, but it's still there's no archetype that supports this. So I don't think Wizard class is still going to get any play even with this buff. Philath or Philath, I don't know how to pronounce it, but Philath was actually one of my favorite cards from Zendikar. In a proper landfall build, you can actually build around this card and get, you know, pretty good results. The problem was it cost 6 mana. You weren't surviving to 6 with Omnath and with Mono Red, with Embercleave and things like that. You were not surviving to turn 6. They've essentially created a buffed version of this that has Trample, and also the tokens that it creates also get trampled when you put the counters on them. So it lets you get in for more damage, which is nice. I mean, it would be nicer if this was a 6/6 as opposed to a 5/5, but I mean, there's not really a lot of landfall synergies in Standard right now. So unless they reintroduce Fabled Passage, I don't think we're going to see much of Philath. So I think these are all the cards that were rebalanced, all 11 of them. Now I'm going to go over the new cards that they've introduced in the new Alchemy set. I'll do that in the next video, but thanks for watching, guys, and hopefully you enjoyed this reaction. See you in the next video.